So, hello everyone. It's Kevin Malone, and I'm here with Carol Lippman of Dearborn Partners, who manages our domestic large cap portfolio. How are you today, Carol?
I'm doing great, Kevin. Thanks so much for asking, and thanks for giving us this opportunity to talk to your friends.
Sure. So, I know this is preaching to the choir, but the investment thesis here is get a reasonable dividend yield, well above the dividend yield of the index, and have that dividend level grow over time, and you've got a great investment thesis. So I've said this to all of our clients. I'm thrilled we have this strategy over the next decade. I don't know what's going to happen in the next 6 months or 12 months, but at some point in time, what's going on now will be behind us. So can you just talk about what's going on with dividend raises in the domestic stocks that you manage for us?
In this 25 stock portfolio so far this year, which is basically through June 30th of 2020, the first half of this year, we've had already 15 dividend increase announcements. And those 15 announcements average about 6.4% more than what those companies were paying a year ago.
Right.
And to put that in context, core consumer price index measure of inflation is right now 1.2%. We know the Fed was, before COVID, trying to get inflation up to 2% core inflation. They're still not there. In fact, it's going the wrong direction. It's going the other way. But our premise is, if we were to get into periods where stock prices did absolutely nothing, the reason that the investment team at Dearborn and I concentrate so hard on trying to find great defensive businesses, and I'll talk about that in a second, that are able to not only pay, but increase dividends throughout any kind of environment, no matter what gets thrown at us. And believe me, when I started this strategy almost 30 years ago, I never dreamed we'd be in a situation like this. But I knew that we wanted businesses that could thrive in the tough economic times as well as the good times, so that they can continue to raise their dividends. And that is basically what we have going on right now. And I just kind of, if I may, I wanted to just let you know, on Valentine's Day, February 14th of this year, the 1 year return of this portfolio at Dearborn Partners, and I think you know we have 3 rising dividend portfolios. But the 1 year total return, price movement plus dividends, of this portfolio was better than any of our other portfolios. It was 25.09%. The other two were 24.82, 24.89, very close. The S&P 500 benchmark was 25.46. So we lagged the benchmark by maybe 35 basis points. But we were doing the best on Valentine's Day, trailing 12-month. Since then, COVID has hurt this, and it has primarily been just a couple of the stocks. And it is the energy patch, which, you know, not only have we had this significantly reduced demand for energy because planes aren't flying or barely flying, and you know, people were totally shut down for a while. And then of course we had this price war between Russia and Saudi Arabia in the midst of that, and we're battling back from that. But a lot of these companies in the energy patch, investors have been viewing them as if their dividends are not secure. Their dividends are not going to be paid. So this is why we have absolutely redoubled our efforts on our investment team to look at, to begin with, not only defensive companies, but getting back to like what we've always tried to teach our children, so that they would be prudent savers and prudent spenders, to separate needs from wants. We on the team ask ourselves, is every company that's currently in our portfolios a need or a want? Because we have seen many of the wants get shut down. But the needs have become called essential businesses, and the wants non-essential businesses. So we've gone a step further, even from defensive, to ask, is it truly a need? And not only for the companies in our portfolios, but sometimes we have to, for various reasons, make a change. And therefore, we want everything that's in, shall we call, our bullpen of candidates that we could use if we have to make a change, because we keep a static 25 companies in our portfolio at all times.
Right.
If we take one out, we have to replace it. And we
Right.
also ask ourselves, are those a need and not a want? So
Right.
that they're very defensive. And we've also then, we used to, very honestly, Kevin, as we looked at our dividend coverage, we used to use forward, because as you know, markets trade on the future, not the past. If
Right.
you and I wouldn't have jobs, Kevin, if everybody could get fabulously wealthy by making decisions based on past
That's
performance.
true.
We know that. So we used to look at forward 12-month numbers for cash flow, operating cash flow, earnings, revenues, all those kinds of things. And you may have noticed that so many companies are pulling their guidance, and
Right.
analysts have stopped making estimates. And I have said then to my team, as we pull this data from FactSet, which is the database from which
Right.
we derive our data, let's use actual trailing 12 months. So as you know, we just finished a calendar quarter, and
Right.
we are now at the beginning of earnings season, and we are downloading these every day because companies are announcing their results every day. And as they file their 10Qs and so forth, we download those data and we crunch these numbers. And we are looking at operating cash flow, actual operating cash flow on a trailing 12-month basis, actual dividends declared,
Right.
and aggregating them, times 12 months,
Right.
4 quarters, what have you, times shares outstanding, looking at aggregate dividends, subtracting that from operating cash flow. We
Right.
also take a look at planned capital expenditures.
Right.
And how imperative is it that they make these capital expenditures? In some businesses, they have to do it. Some can be deferred.
Right.
We're trying so hard to grill the businesses, the companies, the CFOs we talk to and so forth about that very topic. And I'm very pleased to say that though the margin may be a little slimmer on some of our companies, and those are primarily the ones with, heavy capital needs, such as our utilities.
Right.
But they also have strong cash flow because we're all writing them a check every month,
Exactly.
So you have to take these things into consideration. But as I look at our operating cash flow divided by dividends, the multiples are all 1.5 to 5 times, which we think is respectable coverage, but we're keeping a very sharp eye on it.
Yeah. So I just want to pick up on your comment on needs and wants.
Okay, everybody.
As I
like that
reflect
these days.
on your portfolio, I don't think there are a lot of wants in that portfolio. What you just described, I get that you're doubling down on that research, but you've told me that 100 times, that this is what you do. So can you just talk about what stocks did you uncover in the portfolio that you thought were wants?
Well, we really, we had one that we've always looked for the most defensive businesses in all 11 sectors into which the marketplace is divided. We've always done that. But again, we never knew that we were going to get into a period quite like this one. We had a business in our portfolio called Leggett and Platt. Now, I'm sitting on a chair right here that rocks a little bit, it swivels a little bit.
Yeah.
There's Leggett and Platt springs in this chair.
Right.
There are Leggett and Platt components in beds, in automobiles.
Right.
Well, automobiles aren't being built, or maybe they're barely starting up production now.
Right.
But we had months there at the beginning of the shutdown that autos weren't built. End users, mattresses weren't being manufactured
Right.
anymore. If there are mattresses, if you need a new mattress and if they're in stock at the store or the distribution center, you can get one. But if you order something that isn't built, you're not going to get it for a long time.
Right.
So Leggett got caught with end markets for their
Yep.
products
Yep.
that in this shut down all but essential businesses, they got hurt. Now, our analysis was that if they were due for a dividend increase in May.
Right.
They paid the same dividend for 4 quarters. And in May, when they reported their earnings around the 6th of May, which is when 6th or 7th is when they've done it the last few years,
Right.
we were expecting them to report not only earnings, but a bump in their dividend. And they've been raising their dividend about 3% a year. But see, they are one of the higher yielding ones that we had in our portfolio to boost the average yield for your portfolio.
Right.
So they had like a 4.5, 4.6% yield. And you've heard me say many times, it's hard to get both well above average
Yeah.
yield.
Yeah.
When the S&P's yield is what, 1.7 now or something like
Exactly.
that?
Yeah.
Well above average yield and well above average growth in the same package are very tough to get. So we were satisfied with maybe 3% annual dividend growth, which is what we got. But our analysis was when they were reporting their results, that if they, based on estimates, is that if they paid their dividend, Kevin, because they were already BBB-, which is the lowest rung of investment grade debt rating. Yep. And you may know that's one of our disciplines is yep. We require investment grade debt ratings for any company in our portfolios. Right. We do not want people that you ask to put their hard-earned money into our work to own junk bonds. We just don't sleep at night if that's the case. But it was our analysis that if they even paid that dividend, not even raise it, they would be in violation of their covenants.
Yeah.
And the rating agencies would drop their debt rating.
Right.
And so we felt that this was a business that we did not want in our portfolio.
Right.
They reported results, and then about 10 days later on May 14th, they announced that they had worked out, they reported their results and they kept their dividend at the same rate. And then on May 14th, they reported that they had come to an agreement with their lenders, their banks, to extend their credit limits such that they weren't in violation of their debt covenants.
Right.
And we felt that they needed to have disclosed that on the 6th when they reported earnings and not wait 8 more days to disclose that. The feeling that I have about this, Kevin, is when we're dealing with publicly traded entities, which we are,
right.
A publicly traded company is out there asking other people like us for our hard-earned money,
right,
to use to operate their business. And in our opinion, the privilege of using our money requires disclosure.
Yeah, honesty.
The date on that 8K that they filed disclosing that they had reached that agreement with their banks was dated May 6th, and yet they waited 8 days to reveal it.
Right.
And so in my opinion, there have been times that we've removed companies from our portfolio and we've kept them in our bullpen because we figure, well, if they right the ship again, we may put them back in. But this one I'm done with.
Yeah.
I mean,
right.
The fact that management did not disclose this to us, and we would have allowed them to stay on if they went a 5th quarter at the same rate. We've done that. I mean, in the last financial crisis,
right,
there were many companies that cut their dividend, and we said,
right.
I'm sorry, if you cut your dividend in that crisis, we'll never consider you. But there were hundreds of companies that maintained their dividend and several hundred that kept raising them. So
right.
We have learned to adapt. We've had strict disciplines. We've learned that sometimes in significant enough periods, you have to adapt a little bit, but we would have left it if they would have simply disclosed. So we took Leggett and Platt off, and We replaced it with a company called Gilead Sciences, which has
Right.
a 4.5% yield
Yeah.
and is benefiting the current yield of the portfolio. They actually have been raising their dividend 9–10% a year. So
Right.
from the standpoint that you asked me
Right.
about of the dividend growth, we ought to be coming out ahead versus a Leggett and a Platt. To full disclosure on my part, I will tell you, we may have marked the bottom on the day that we sold Leggett. The stock is up about 30% since we did that.
Yeah. But
We
Carol,
have no control over what
Right.
stock prices are going to do. We have to operate based on what our number crunching of
Right.
the financials tells us, our comfort level with the ability of a company over time to not only maintain the dividend, but raise it. And it's early days, Kevin. I mean, we don't know if there's going to be a second wave. We don't even know when this first wave is over.
Right.
We don't know when Leggett's business is going to recover, that the end markets are going to recover. So time will tell. Time will tell.
But I just want to point one thing out. That was an answer to the question about wants. But that story, I think, epitomizes the discipline and the willingness to distrust based on just common sense human principles. If you lied to me the first time, even if it was a little lie, I'm not going to trust you the next time. And I've known you for a long time, and that is an integral part of what you do. And we appreciate that.
Thank you for observing that, because Kevin, as I think you know, we take it so seriously when people entrust us with their hard-earned money, and we try so hard not to lose it. And we'd rather not lose a lot than to make a lot. And as we know, and I don't know if you all ever read my commentary, but 21%, 1/5 of that S&P 500 benchmark's return year to date is from those, what are they calling them now? Fan mag, 6 companies, 4 of which pay no dividend. So they'll never qualify for our portfolios as long as they pay no dividend. One of them is Apple, which we have in another couple of rising dividend strategies, but not yours. The yield isn't strong enough.
Right.
And the other is Microsoft, which we don't have. Oh, did you get hit with the Microsoft bug today with your Outlook?
No, I didn't.
Oh, I couldn't open up my Outlook on my desktop computer today. It would open and it would immediately shut. And this is a global Microsoft problem.
So I just want to get your comment, as long as we're on these stocks that are driving the market, about what you think of a company that changed retail for us, but trades at 135 times earnings. Can you ever imagine yourself buying a stock that trades at 135 times earnings?
No, I cannot. And let's also just acknowledge that until about a year ago, they didn't even have earnings. So, there's a lot of willing suspension of disbelief of people in the marketplace. And look, there are strategies that have those, and that's fine. And, the reality is, Kevin, people with well-diversified portfolios, there may be a place for investments such as those in there, but we march to a discipline, and our discipline is, and oh, by the way, like if you ever look at Lipper or Morningstar and see the category that they put a mutual fund like ours into, and it'll have dividends or equity income in the name. And we'll look at top 10 holdings of some of our peers that may be ranked just a smidge higher than we are, although we're ranked pretty high. I'm knocking wood that should continue. But you will see Facebook, Amazon, which you were just asking me about, Netflix, and Google in there, because they have drifted from their stated style and they are chasing performance. And I'm sorry, we're not going to do that.
What they're trying to do is to get a high R-squared to an index, and that's a fantasy. That's an absolute fantasy.
Well, we actually have a low R-squared to an index, and we wear it as a badge of honor, because
that's why we love what you do.
Good diversification.
Yeah, great. Well, Carol, thank you very much. We appreciate the update. We appreciate everything you're doing. we're all going to look back at these times and be glad they're part of our history, both on the pandemic and on the underperformance. But keep up the good work, and we look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you so much. We promise to work hard to bring you lots of rising dividends, Kevin.
Good.
Thank you.